Hello, I'm Jonasz Rewiński and you're watching Break the Fake. They make them, we break them, and tell you everything you need to know. Let's talk about what Russia really wants from this war. I know, it's a special military operation in Moscow's parlance, but if it quacks like a duck, you know the drill. Anyway, the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova has once again stepped forward to explain that Russia is the only country seeking peace, while everyone else is just causing problems. According to Zakharova, the international community is blocking Russian initiatives and preventing peace from returning to Ukraine. It's a familiar performance. Moscow presents itself as the lone adult in the room, surrounded by ungrateful troublemakers. The script never changes.
Намерение высокого представителя ЕС по иностранным делам и политике безопасности подготовить набор условий, как она сказала, к Москве, без которых ЕС не поддержит мир на Украине. Вы только вдумайтесь, вообще-то нормальные люди должны поддерживать мир, наверное, в любом случае, в качестве основной цели, задачи, в качестве той точки, к которой следовало бы стремиться, того ориентира, на который следовало смотреть и выстраивать свои шаги.
What Zakharova leaves out is that the people actually holding the line are the Ukrainian military and international forces protecting Ukraine's territorial integrity. In the Kremlin version, that apparently counts as sabotage. Under this logic, peace is achieved through invasion, missile strikes, and city blockades. Then, when resistance follows, the complaint is that someone is interfering with the peace process. Zakharova speaks about obstacles, but the most obvious one is Russia itself and its half-million-strong army stationed on Ukrainian territory. It is a remarkable peace plan, you see. Arrive with tanks, fire missiles, then express disappointment that the target dares to object. So, is Russia really pushing for peace? Check the newsfeed and you'll find out how, just before heading to another round of talks in Geneva, Russia targeted the power network in the Odessa region. And not just there. Overall, 12 regions were affected, with 400 drones and almost 30 missiles fired into Ukraine. That's a really weird olive branch you've got there, Mr. Putin. But if Russia's version of the dove of peace is a MiG-31, then what could you expect? Thing is, Russia's situation isn't looking too rosy either, with recent Ukrainian strikes on Russian air defense leaving half of all Pantsir systems out of action and Russian users unceremoniously booted out of the Starlink network. Moscow may want to reconsider its nonchalant approach to those peace talks, lest the tides of war turn in Kyiv's favor. Because if it really pushes for peace one day, nobody will believe it anymore. Once bitten, twice shy. Want to hear the quiet part spoken out loud by the Russian aggressors? Alright, here we go. Our goal is to create a complete power blackout in Ukraine in winter and destroy all utility networks. End of quote. This statement is from Russian expert Vasily Kashin, who openly describes a strategy that, according to him at least, corresponds to the Kremlin's vision. So, it's been all about power plants, heating networks, and water pipelines all along, not even pretending it's military targets anymore. These people are causing a midwinter humanitarian catastrophe, and they know it.
У России есть все же теперь конкретная цель. Она, видимо, связана с достижением блэкаута в ходе зимы, что может повлечь за собой размораживание коммунальных сетей и их необратимое разрушение. Это повлечет за собой последствия на многие годы вперед, собственно говоря,
The idea of using cold weather as a weapon is not new in the history of warfare, but in today's world, it sounds like a return to practices that international law has long sought to consign to history textbooks. Mass power cuts in winter mean not only darkness in homes, but also problems with hospitals, transport, communications and water supply. Some Western politicians continue to talk about dialogue and the need for cooperation. Well, how about a no-fly zone instead? Close the sky? Too far out of the comfort zone, dear Western leaders, eh? Well, let me tell you, ordinary people in Kiev, millions of them, are way out of their comfort zone because of Russia. Doesn't engaging in polite conversation with Putin's comrades while pretending the humanitarian crisis isn't that bad sound like textbook moral inconsistency? You know, asking for a friend. Statements about plans to leave the country without electricity and heat in winter make it clear that this isn't about a peaceful initiative, but a strategy to wear down the civilian population, and this at a time when peace talks are well underway. So obviously Moscow dreams of a moment when angry Ukrainians tell their government to cave in to Russian demands. But you know what? Ukrainians know a thing or two about determination and resilience. They have something to fight for: their home, their freedom, their identity. And Russia, with its coercive model of governance, never quite seems to grasp the idea that people make sacrifices because they want to. In Russia, you obey, or you get the frog poison treatment, apparently. To the Kremlin, freedom is a scary thought. They hate it with a vengeance, but they also don't really get what it's all about. So they think a few war crimes will do the trick. Well, Ukraine has other ideas. Russian TV anchor Sergei Mardan has said that Russia's real goal is not only to change the government in Ukraine, but to completely destroy Ukrainian statehood. What is it with these Russians lately? Are they bored of pretending and want to bring their belligerence out in the open? A moment ago, we had one admitting to war crimes, and now this guy effectively goes out and says, yes, our intentions border on the genocidal. Who knows? At this rate, they might just start calling their war a war instead of this special operation nonsense. These words emphasize once again that negotiations with the Kremlin are reaching an impasse not because of misunderstandings in terms of wording, but because of fundamental differences in goals. If one side talks about peace and the other about the elimination of the sovereign state, then how do you even go about finding a compromise? Where is the middle ground? Because for Russia, middle ground and scorched earth are evidently interchangeable.
Украина как государственное образование должна быть разрушена, полностью деконструирована. Всякая организованная жизнь на этой территории в рамках, опять-таки, того государства, которое возникло на руинах УССР, вот всякая вот эта организованная политическая жизнь должна там исчезнуть. Это государство должно в идеале полностью исчезнуть, как морок, как химера.
See, he did say war, but also he said, and I quote, there should be no Ukraine or its capital at all. Okay, so how much clearer do the Russians have to be about all this? This is straight up genocide talk. Even if the guy later said he didn't mean it, all he wanted to say is that there should be no capital in the administrative sense, we all know what he was thinking. If only this was confined to the rhetoric, but we've seen this stuff happen. Cities reduced to ashes, the executions, the abductions of Ukrainian kids. That, unfortunately, makes the idea credible. The idea being that Russia pretends to be waving an olive branch, but what it really wants is ethnic cleansing. Against the backdrop of such rhetoric, there are increasingly frequent calls for tougher action, and with good reason. Because if there is a regime out there that's not just toying with the idea of genocide and ethnic cleansing, but also has committed so many war crimes that you can clearly see all ethical constraints are already out of the window, then can the global community simply sit by and watch? Plunging a city of 3 million into cold and darkness isn't enough for a response? Then what else needs to happen? And if anybody complains about uncomfortable questions, then I hate to break it to you, but we're not in Kansas anymore. Haven't been since 2022 at the very least. And in those 4 long years, Russia has done enough to show it's not exactly acting in good faith. And with this, we conclude this edition of Break the Fake. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news, updates, and commentary.